Let me pull this thing here. Welcome to Double Fries No Slaw. It is Sunday night. We're coming off a bye week, October 13th. Richie, how's your weekend been?
Been good, man. I just watched a crazy Bucks Saints game. Always a fun day in the Barnes household with the wife being a Saints fan. Bucks go up big early, Saints take the lead, and then the Bucks kind of pull away in the second half. A stress-free college football Saturday, which is always nice. And just a really good weekend. How about you?
Pretty good. Yeah, no complaints. Let's. Oh yeah, I'm not going to complain, but I'll tell you a little bit about the weekend. But yeah, appreciate BetUS for their support. Guthries, we'll talk about all those folks in a minute. Rhoback, Garnet and Gold, all the gang. But I feel like I've just been. Now yesterday I didn't do anything. That's not true. I cleaned up the back patio, but I have a stack outside of my house right now that is bigger than the size of my house, as we just lost Richie, so this could get tricky here in a minute. But I do have a stack massive outside of my house. So if you were impacted at all by Hurricane Milton, which I know a lot of us were, not as bad for some folks as it looked like it could have been, we're certainly thinking about you, though, if you had any kind of significant damage or any injury or, God forbid, any kind of loss of life to family or friends. There's a house in my neighborhood, just 6 or 7 houses down the street from me, that literally has a tree through it right now. Which is pretty crazy to kind of think like that could have been us. Fortunately, they weren't home when that happened, but we were lucky to escape the storm with no real damage. A lot of cleanup. We had no power for a couple of days. Other than that, we did pretty well. So our thoughts and prayers are with anybody that was impacted there. I got Richie back here, so we're good to go. But yeah, let me give some love to Guthries, and we'll get rolling here. Make sure you stop by Guthries if you are in the Tallahassee area or anywhere close. 1818 West Tennessee, 2550 North Monroe, and 2870 Appalachia Parkway. That one is to go or carry out only. Can't dine in there, but they do a good job at all 3 locations. Make sure that you are supporting our friends over at Guthries of Tallahassee. Richie, coming out of the bye week, not a lot of warm and fuzzies, I don't think, right now for us to think about, but we certainly can kind of talk through some things. Let's start out really positive, something that nobody probably wants us to do. What have you been most impressed with about this team? I know there's not a lot. I know we're 1-5. I'm not trying to make jokes. But has there been anything that you can kind of look at and say, like, okay, I'm happy with this? Not even maybe most impressed, just like moderately impressed with, that you'd give like an A, B type grade to?
I'm not sure. I think Ja'Kai Douglas has been Ja'Kai Douglas, what we expected. He's Mr. Slow and Steady. He's not a wide receiver 1, but, that's okay. You don't have to be. But I do think he's been reliable this season at the wideout position, which you haven't had a whole lot of reliability on the offensive side of the ball. I think Josh Farmar's had a fantastic season, quite frankly. I know the defense has had extreme struggles on 3rd and long, but down to down, 1st and 2nd down defense, I'm happy with it. It's just unfortunate that they can't seem to get off the field on 3rd down. And I think special teams, you got to be happy with Mastromato and Ryan Fitzgerald. When you're 1-5, when you came into the season with college football playoff aspirations, it's hard to find a whole lot to be excited about and happy with. But I think those things really stand out. And I know he didn't have a great game in totality against Clemson, but I was encouraged by what I saw from Brock Glenn. And we'll talk more about him maybe a little later today and definitely on Wednesday. But I was encouraged with what I saw from him. I think he took a step in his development that you could hopefully build upon. And, like a special teams is probably the biggest satisfactor of what we have so far this season for me. But I think the defensive line as a whole, I'd like to see more out of Marvin Jones Jr. I think Pat Payton has actually been pretty good. And this is so cliche, and I hate to even say it, but the team really doesn't look like they've quit. They just don't look like a great football team.
Yeah, that's a pretty elementary thing, not for your standards, like just in general. That's like, it's sad that like our big positive, our big takeaway is that like they haven't quit. Like, congratulations on playing hard. That, the game you're getting paid tens of, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars to play at this moment. Like, thanks for not quitting, which is frustrating to even think that you would have to say that. And that be your big takeaway through the first half of the year. I would agree with you. Ja'Kai Douglas been up, kind of an, old, reliable. I think Toafili has run hard at times. I think that's been, something that you like to see. I will say, we're really, pulling from the bottom of the barrel here. I'm not trying to be funny about this or at all. I'm glad that they've somewhat gone to a little bit of a youth movement. We talked about that last week. I hope that kind of continues and they continue to go that direction. And I think they will. I think that, you got guys that probably are starting to make some business decisions. And I don't even mean like Peyton or Farmer or anything, but I think you probably are trying to look for more of what you have in the future. They've played relatively hard. Like you said, they're just not very good. I was somewhat encouraged with the way that Brock played. Obviously, the encouraging parts of Brock playing well are also frustrating because he didn't play well or he didn't get in earlier. But yeah, I think there's some positives to take away from it. But yeah, not a ton, right? The kicking game been pretty good. Hard to complain too much about that. You're having to kick too much. Last year, so speaking of Guthries, last year Guthrie sponsored the Red Zone. So every time you get in the Red Zone, whether you're listening on the radio or you're in Doak, they'd be like the Guthrie's Red Zone. And he was like, man, I'm getting a killer deal on this. Well, not so much. We never get in the Red Zone. And Guthrie's is kind of rethinking that investment and wondering if they can get some money back on that. So no, I'm just kidding to the people at Legends that are probably listening and like, nope, you're not getting any money back. So, but yeah, that's certainly not been, well, okay. There's a list of things. We'll do this side and then we'll move on because we don't have to just be negative all night, but kind of where we are. What have you been most disappointed with? Like, is there one or two things? I know you could probably say a billion things, but is there one or two things that you put at the top of the list that you've been most disappointed with?
Being number 133 out of 133 teams in the country in rushing yards. That I'll start there. That's not great. But yeah, offensively, it's the rushing attack. It's been non-existent. And if you listen to Mike Norvell before the season, he said, this offensive line is the best he's had, the deepest he's had. Well, where the hell are they? Again, you are 133 out of 133, and it's not like other teams have played more games than you. Like, everyone's pretty much played 6 games at this point. That part is just mind-boggling because Mike Norvell's been able to run the ball everywhere he's been. That's kind of been a staple of his offense. He's always, even with Jordan Travis, he wanted to run the ball and establish a ground attack. And then I guess, I touched on it, a few minutes ago, but the third down defense, it's so frustrating because the defense, again, on first and second down, they seem to be average, maybe even above average. And then they just give up a 3rd and 9, a 3rd and 12, a 3rd and 13, doesn't matter. But the rushing attack is what's really baffled me the most, how that we cannot run the ball at all.
Yeah. The rushing attack is terrible. Offensive line being bad, certainly impacts that. And teams just, it's part coaching, right? It's part of the offensive line not being as good as you thought it would be. And it's also part teams knew that we couldn't throw the ball. And so why not just stack the box against them? We're so predictable. Now, I didn't expect Brock to throw it 40 plus times. And so that to me is I don't know that I want him throwing it 40 plus times every game, but we also got down. I don't expect Duke to score on us like Clemson did. And so you had to throw more than maybe you wanted to. But I do think that the threat of Brock's legs and the threat of Brock's arm probably opened some things up for the running game. Also, not playing defenses named Clemson. The running attack against Clemson was just absolutely, putrid for sure. So yeah, the running game to me, awful. The defensive line, would probably be the other, so if those were yours, mine would be the other side. Now, running game is probably the top, right? I'd probably put DJ up there pretty high too, not to list every single thing. But the other side being the defensive line, kind of thought this defensive line was going to just dominate games and take over. And, they did a good job against Cal and Memphis. Not that, at the end of the day, that's Cal and Memphis. And they've done okay since then too, but defensive line, that's been a disappointment to me. Even though I think Farmar has played pretty well, Pat's come around a little bit. Jackson is not nearly the player that I think we thought we would be getting. And then, MJJ, I don't want to crush on a kid too much. He's looked a little bit better recently. Yeah. He just, I thought when we took MJJ, I said in the Discord, right, like that was kind of a depth piece for me. And I thought he could be really good in 25. And the fact that you couldn't get anybody else, you missed out on Scrouton and you missed out on other defensive end targets, kind of proved that Florida State kind of thought the same thing, that they didn't necessarily want to start that kid, and they had to, and you've had to live with the results. It's not MJJ's fault that he's not really ready or wasn't ready at the beginning. Maybe he turns it on second half. So, defensive line been certainly a down spot. I think Mike Norvell's coaching's been pretty down. He doesn't look like you know what they always said about Mike was like his energy, man. Like you just get there and it's 4 a.m. It doesn't matter. It's midnight. It doesn't matter. It's 6 p.m. It doesn't matter. Always got so much energy, man. Like he looks dead on the sideline. And I like Mike. I think he's a good Christian guy. I want him to work out. I want him to be Bobby 2.0. I do. I want all that. I like him personally. Like I'm not like these Gator fans that like hate Billy Napier and want him dead. I like Mike Norvell. I want him to work out. Any criticism of Mike Norvell is criticism because I think he's not living up to the standard that he himself sets. But I like Mike. I want him to work out. All that said, he looks dead inside. Like and 1-5 will do that to you, right? Like I'm not even saying like do I look happy on here most weeks? No, I don't. But he does not look like the same guy. And it sucks, man, because I like Mike. I don't enjoy Mike looking miserable on the sideline or being miserable in press conference or anything like that. But man, when they were 4-0, he still, or I'm sorry, 4-0, 0-4 in 21, he had some passion, he had some fire. He doesn't have that anymore. I don't know. No. I don't know where that's gone. So, all right, I will ask this because we do skew pretty positively, even during a bad year. Florida got to go through a bye week. They beat Mississippi State, and then they got to go through a bye week, and they totally dominated UCF. Now, that game got close late. UCF's not very good. They lost to Cincinnati. They got blown out by Colorado. And then they nearly beat, if not for Napier being a terrible coach, they should have beat Tennessee last night too. Like, if he doesn't bungle that so pathetically, which again is probably why he's going to get fired before the end of this year, they beat Tennessee, a top 10 opponent that probably shouldn't be top 10, but on the road in Neyland with 100,000 fans there, blah, blah, blah. Do you think the bye week could have a similar effect for FSU? Like, do you think 2 weeks with Glenn, you're playing Duke, then Carolina, Charleston Southern, Florida's not very good either. Do you think the bye week, now I don't think you beat Miami. I don't think you beat Notre Dame. Could the bye week have a similar effect here, or am I just being super hopeful there?
I definitely think it can. And you got to think about Brock Glenn, the situations he's been thrown into. He's never had more than 5 or 6 days notice that he was starting for a football game. It's just, that's unfortunately the reality for him. Now for him to go out against Clemson, at least look somewhat comfortable. Again, it wasn't a great game. I'm not going to sit here and say, he's Jameis 2.0. He's not, but he looked comfortable, and he does have that moxie to him that I don't think anything really is going to phase him. And now for him to have 2 full weeks of practice with number 1 reps for 2 full weeks, knowing he's starting the game against a not great opponent. Look, I know Duke is 5-1. They're not a good team. I'm sorry. I know they're favored by, I think it's 3 points now is the last spread I saw. But I just think the recipe is all there for Florida State to really come out. And I hate to say this, man, sucks as a Florida State fan, get back on track with a win over Duke, because that's kind of the wrap and what we need. But I do think the bye week, I think it came at the perfect time with DJ, going down. And I think we've seen the last of DJ. I know there's reports that he'll be back and he could start again. I don't think that will be the case unless Brock is just terrible. And I don't expect Brock to be terrible. I don't expect him to be elite or great, but I think he can be solid for you. And I think he's a better option for you in this offense. But yeah, I think the bye week comes at the perfect time. And I think Florida State, we'll talk more Wednesday. I've not picked a score or anything like that yet, but if they can't use these 2 weeks to go out, get Glenn ready, look at film, have Mike Norvell point at the tape and say, hey, Brock, great play here. You're just missing by a little bit. Or, hey, what were you thinking on this throw? Because we cannot have this moving forward. You now have that opportunity for 2 full weeks. And I know, to your point, Mike doesn't have that same passion on the sidelines that we saw. When we saw him grab Deuce Spann and just coach him up in that Syracuse game, that was some of the best coaching I've ever seen on a sideline on a game day. We're still looking to find that Mike Norvell again, but he's still a workaholic. He's still putting in the time, putting in the hours, watching the tape, getting the team prepared, getting the coaches prepared. I do think that this was a much needed bye week. I think if we played Duke yesterday, they probably beat us. I'm not so sure moving into Friday, but again, we'll get more into that on our Wednesday show.
So my buddy Alan, we used to do the spaces on Twitter, and my buddy Alan in Tampa used to call in a lot. If you guys were on the spaces, you remember he'd be the guy that was always out on like the big old tractor or something, like moving dirt or whatever. Newberg would ask him what he was doing. So Alan told me he grew up in Alabama, and I don't remember who the coach was. It's obviously well before Saban, or whatever. Said that he lost a game. I don't remember who the game was to, but they lost a game, or they had lost their second game in a row or something like that. And Alabama fans literally called for a scheduled delivery for like a moving truck, like a U-Haul, to be parked outside his door the next morning. Now, he didn't get fired that week, but like that's how ruthless Alabama fans were for just like, I think it was just like the first loss of the year, second loss or something. I don't know, whatever it was. Like, it was kind of outrageous. If Mike, as much as I like him, starts DJ in another game, absent like injuries to your next two guys, like if a couple guys get, whatever. If Mike just chooses to start DJ over either Luke or Brock, I will be the one to call the moving truck. Like, I will be the guy in Alan's story that calls and I think I won't be the only one. Fans will, whatever goodwill Mike still has from 13-0 or 10-3, which is fading. If he starts DJ another game, which I don't suspect he will. I've been told DJ's done for the year. I think that there are going to be a lot of fans that are just like all the way out on him.
I'll tell you a story, because Florida State fans we are a passionate bunch, right? My freshman year, we lost at home to Wake Forest 30-0. The next day, Bobby Bowden, the legend, that he has a statue, he is Florida State. He had for sale signs put in his front yard by fans. That's how
that's wild, man.
If they're going to do that to Bobby Bowden, yeah, Mike, you don't have that leash. You lose to Duke, it's going to be a problem. And again, to your point, TJ, we both like Mike. We think he loves his players more than most coaches probably do. He's not trying to start fights with other quarterbacks like Kirby Smart and things like that. But give me Kirby Smart if he's going to fight a quarterback, but give me national championships. But yeah, no, Mike, this really is a must win for him. Yeah. He's not going to be fired at the end of this year, but the calls for him to be fired will escalate rapidly if he loses this game, because there's not a whole lot of wins left on the schedule after that. Charleston Southern, maybe Florida, but I think Florida beats us as of where we stand right now today. I think DJ Lagway is a hell of a talent in the future of that program. Yeah, like this is a must-win game for Mike Norvell for his future, because even if you come back next year, say you finish this year 3-9, generous, and then next year you go 7-5. That's not good enough. Like, if the money's there, he'd be gone. I just don't think the money's there.
Yeah. So yeah, they need to find a way to win. We'll talk about Duke in a moment, but yeah, it'll be bad if he tries DJ out there for another game. And on Florida, well, I got to take on Florida that we'll talk about here in a minute. I want to make sure that I don't get too far ahead of myself. But let me give some love to Garnet and Gold, and we'll move on to another segment. GarnetandGold.com. Make sure you're using the code NOSLAW, NOSLAW, for 15% off the very best merchandise, apparel, athletic wear, whatever you're looking for. Garnet and Gold has you covered. Listen, you need to be following them on Twitter too. If you're not, you need to go check it out. They put out a 25% code that was good through like the weekend. So I think it might be good through Sunday night. So if you're watching this live, go check out Garnet and Gold's Twitter. Go grab that and kind of use it. I mean, I want you to use our code for NOSLAW, but if you can get an extra 10% off, you certainly don't want to miss out on that. All right, let's jump on to this. Richie, Florida State in the portal just didn't seem to evaluate very well. And their calling card, the reason we overlooked the struggles at high school recruiting was because we said like, oh, well, they always evaluate so well in the portal. They always do such a good job in the portal that they can overcome it. They can make up for it. And this year they were absolutely brutal in the portal. When you think about it, how many hits have there been? Like, I want to bring up some numbers and some stats, but when you just look at it from that perspective, how many hits would you say, like, who has been a hit in the portal so far this year?
When you're 1-5, I don't know if you can point to any hits. Certainly not DJ. And, to your point, we kind of gave Mike and the staff the benefit of the doubt, because nobody wanted Trey Benson when he hit the portal. Nobody wanted Johnny Wilson. Keir Thomas was kind of recruited a little bit. Same with Jerrion Jones. Jermaine was obviously someone that everybody wanted, but they had so many hits, and I guess we got spoiled and blinded to the fact that hit streak, it's impossible to maintain that. It really is. When you look at last year's roster, like over half your starters between your starting 22 were portal guys that were all hits. Like Trey Benson is in the NFL now. Who's a third day pick. And nobody wanted him. Mario didn't even want to take him to Miami, and he recruited him to Oregon. Johnny Wilson was another one. The frame was there, but could he really be a good receiver? Turns out, yeah, he's a damn good receiver. At least in college he was. I can't think of a single hit in the portal right now based on what we've seen on film through 6 games. I just don't see it, TJ.
Yeah. So to me, like, for what you expected him to be, I think Lolo Heo was probably a hit. Like, you expected him to be like a good run stopping defensive end, and he's been that. I think Jalen Lucas was probably about what you expected until he got hurt. I'm not going to blame the staff for him getting injured. I think Richie Leonard was a hit. I'll give them that one. I mean, he was your best offensive lineman before he got hurt, which, I asked Florida people when he transferred, and they were like, nope, we got too many guards. We're not even going to miss him. So for that to be your best offensive lineman, like, you probably have bigger problems than you realized for that to be the case. And then I think Jaylen Brown was Jaylen Brown, I think, to me, will probably end up being a hit over the course of his career. He's been one of your more consistent wide receivers. That's one that I don't have a huge issue with. And you have other guys that could turn into hits. Like maybe Marvin Jones turns it on this year and next year. You could have guys be second and third year hits.
Yeah. Benson should be good. There's a lot of potential, but there was no
like slam dunks.
Yeah.
And you needed slam dunks. You lost Jared Verse. You lost Braden Fisk. You lost Johnny and Keon. You lost Trey Benson. Like, you needed some guys to come in and be hits. You lost Bless Harris.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, okay, look at this. I tweeted this the other day, and I'm going to throw this up, Harlan, if you can get it off the screen when we get done with this. But, Richie, I don't know if you can see that graphic or not that I threw up on the screen. But player A, these are PFF grades. PFF, not necessarily the end-all, be-all, but something to look at. Player A, an overall grade of 34. That's awful. Like 60 is kind of like replacement level. 70 is like kind of average to above average, and then 80 is like really good. Overall, 34. Run defense, this player has a 49.4. Tackle, 47.5. All of these are awful. Pass rush, 60. That's very limited snaps for that. And then coverage, 32.5. It is a defensive back. Player B, 75.7. Run defense, 75.7 as well. Tackle, 71. Pass rush, again, for a DB, doesn't really matter, but still an upgrade, 63.1. And then coverage, 74.1. You look at the snaps, 31 snaps and 142 snaps. Did you see the tweet? Do you know who these two players are?
I'm fairly certain I do. I'm fairly certain player A is Earl Little Jr. and player B is Greedy Vance.
Yeah, Greedy Vance absolutely balling out with a really good nickel corner PFF grade, and Earl Little, who has barely played at all.
In a much better conference than the ACC.
Yeah, and so frustrating to see that. Frustrating to see that. Now, fortunately, Kevin Knowles is his grade has been much closer to Greedy's, not as good as Greedy's, but been much closer to Greedy's than Earl's, right? So your wins above replacement, right, has not let you down terribly, and defensive back is not the position that I'm going to harp on or say is just terrible for Florida State. But I do think in a bigger picture scheme of looking at things, that was a horrible miss by the staff. Now, maybe Earl turns it around. Jerrion Jones was unplayable at times. Earl is absolutely unplayable right now. And I think what the staff did is they missed on guys early in the portal. The kid went to A&M. Another kid went to Colorado. Another kid went to Indiana. And they fell back on old relationships they had. They finished second for Earl Little out of high school. They finished second for Marvin Jones Jr. out of high school. They finished second for Jaylen Brown out of high school. They finished second. They had a relationship with Richie. And what they did was they just circled back to those kids they already knew. And they got, I don't want to call it lazy, but kind of lazy. And again, Greedy versus Earl, not impacting you that much because Knowles has stepped up and been much better than you thought he would be. But it does kind of prove to the point of, man, you got so enamored with those high school evaluations that you completely blew it in the portal. And again, that one for one, maybe not the worst that you have seen, but go look at what Dennis Briggs is doing compared to what some of your defensive tackles are doing. Go look at what some other guy, Bless Harris, is doing compared to your tackle. It's pretty alarming what you let walk for what you let walk in, and it is certainly hurting Florida State overall. So just misevaluating the portal. Like, how did we get here? When the book is written, when the podcast is done, well, we just did it. That's how. You misevaluated the portal, you missed, and that one there is pretty alarming. Because I think fans loved Greedy. I think they were thrilled to get Greedy Vance in. And the trade-off there was pretty bad. So, Richie, any other thoughts on the portal or just where we were in general, and then we can kind of move on from there?
No, I agree. I don't know why you let him in, and I don't know the factors around Greedy's situation. We've had him on this show. Like he was a extremely nice guy, really good kid, and I'm very happy to see him, thriving out at USD right now. But yeah, they just made a ton of bad miscalculations, and 1-5 is proof of that. There's nothing else to say, really.
Yeah, frustrating. Hopefully that's something that can improve. Hopefully that's something that they can get better with again. But certainly has not been very good this year. I think the other thing with the portal that you mentioned, not only did Florida State miss in the portal, the supply and the demand is a real thing. And Florida State, to their credit, got on the portal before anybody else, right? Like they were. Norvell was the portal king, right? It was him or Lane Kiffin or this guy or that guy, but it was Norvell based on the results they got out of the portal. And I think it made everybody else look around and say like, hey, we can fill certain holes on our roster too. Like, look what Miami did. Miami went out and got the best quarterback available. They went out and got one of the best running backs available. They got really good defensive linemen that Florida State wanted, that Miami was willing to essentially pay more for, right? Florida State was kind of cheap on that. And Florida State didn't pressure as much as Miami did. Like Miami beat your butt for those defensive linemen. They went out and got wide receivers that were really good that Florida State could have used. And so all that said, and it wasn't just Miami. Ole Miss went nuts in the portal this year. A&M went nuts in the portal this year. Florida got some good pieces in the portal this year. A really good linebacker in Pup Howard, who they had a previous relationship with. Good wide receivers. That DK kid nearly won them the game last night with punt returns. And so, I think that Florida State took advantage of the portal before everybody else did, and then for some reason just didn't realize hey, everybody else is going to catch up to this too. Yeah. Supply and demand is going to be a problem. We probably cannot ride this thing into the ground, and they tried to ride it into the ground, and unfortunately it kind of bit them in the ass.
Yeah, no, it's frustrating because to your point, Mike Norvell, he hit the portal early in his career because he had to. He didn't have an option. This roster was so devoid of talent when he got here between the end of the Jimbo years and the 2 years of Willie. Nobody wanted to come to Florida State, and Jermaine Johnson was really the first guy that he went and found and kind of made it cool to come to Florida State from the transfer portal. And now that stigma's over. Like, no one cares. No one's like, oh, I'm a portal guy. If I go to Florida State, I'm going to thrive. Yeah, we had that happen with several players in the past few years, but that's gone at this point. So he needs to, we talked about it last week. There's a lot of changes that need to be made. He needs to hold his assistant coaches much more accountable when it comes to high school recruiting, because you mentioned you stopped just shy of saying they're lazy. I'll go out and say it. I think this is a lazy recruiting staff as a whole, and that's frustrating. And I truly believe that. Mario Cristobal is a terrible game day coach, but when it comes to the recruiting trail, he is relentless. And look what they're doing now. They're number 6 in the country. They've got some help from the refs. I'll throw that out there. But yeah, like Mike needs to demand more of his staff when it comes to the trail. And if you can't deliver, he needs to move on from them.
So let's give a little bit of love to BetUS. Make sure that you guys are betting with BetUS this year. If you are, use our code YouTube150. Whether you're betting on Sunday Night Football, Monday Night Football, college football, table tennis at 4 a.m., it doesn't matter. If you're that big of a degenerate, go get a bonus from BetUS by using our code YouTube150. That's YouTube150. You get a 150% bonus on your first deposit. Your next two, you get a 125% deposit bonus, up to $2,000. If you deposit more on that first one, you get the bigger bonus. I'm not telling you to put $2,000 in. Always bet responsibly, but You get a bigger bonus if you do it on the first one. Appreciate BetUS for their support. Go check them out today. We've appreciated our partnership with them this year. Richie, when you look at the rest of the year, Florida State has 6 games. We're at the midway point. Probably has gone as poorly as possible through the first 6 games. You've got 6 games left. What are your realistic expectations for the rest of the year? And nothing's going to make you happy, but would a winning record down the stretch make you like somewhat? I mean, not a winning record overall. I don't really know that you could get to that unless Miami or Notre Dame really, really slipped up. But if you were able to get to 4-2, would you at least feel, if you got to 4-2 and you didn't get just absolutely mauled by Miami and Notre Dame, the season would still be a waste, right? At 5-7, even if you get to 6-6, it's a waste. Shoot, you go 6-0 and you get to 7-5. I think the season's still a waste. Now you'll feel better about it coming out of it. But is 4-2 down the stretch? Is a winning record down the stretch? That would mean a win over one of your rivals. I guess, or a loss to both of them and beating Notre Dame and everybody else. But would 4-2 down the stretch like kind of make you feel a little bit better? Like what would be your feelings after that?
It really depends how it looks. So Friday night, obviously, we're at Duke. Then we host Miami. Then we host North Carolina. Then we're
Miami on the road, but yeah.
Yeah.
I guess it's kind of hosting Miami when it's down there. Yeah. You were right.
We host North Carolina. Then we're up in South Bend. Charleston Southern comes to town. And then Florida the week after that. So I'm just looking at this, trying to see. I don't know if I can see 4 wins. I think you could beat Duke. You could beat Duke. You could beat North Carolina. You could beat Charleston Southern, and you could beat Florida. So I think those are your 4 winnable games. I don't think you're beating Miami or Notre Dame, regardless of what happened. So of those 4 winnable games, going 4-0 would be amazing, right? I just don't see that happening. So I think you're looking best case scenario, in my opinion, is 3-3. No, there's no result that could happen to end the season, to finish the season, even 6-0. That would not make me happy with the season because, again, we're coming off a 13-0 season where we should have been in the college football invitational, and we did not get invited. That's fine. It happened. I get it. The Orange Bowl happened, but we came here. They went to the portal because they thought we had a team or, the nucleus to get ready to make another run at the playoff, being a 12-team playoff. Even if you don't win the ACC, okay, go 10-2, you might sneak your way in. And you're not going to Charlotte. We were all joking, like, book your hotels in Charlotte because we're going back, guys. Yeah, that's clearly not happening. And I just don't see any optimism coming out of this season other than what happens the Sunday after the season. Who gets let go. And I'd never want anyone to lose their job. But when you're making hundreds of thousands of dollars and this is the product you're giving a fan base who you're asking them in this environment where, we're paying so much more for groceries and gas and whatever it may be. It doesn't matter. And we're also given to boosters and the Battle's End and whatever it may be to watch a 1-5 football team, even if it's a 7-5 football team, which it will not be. No, this season is a failure of tremendous proportions, and I will only feel better when I see changes are made and that Mike Norvell is serious about turning things around. Like we talked about it last week, Brian Kelly, how he kind of made massive changes at Notre Dame and went from 4-8 to a really good football team again.
Okay, so I agree with you on the whole. Like, it won't make me feel better about the rest of the season. But if they were to go anywhere from 4-2 to 6-0, which I'm not projecting, if they were to do that, it would give me a little bit more confidence about like what next year could look like. Like if they were to win the 4 games that are, we'll say, winnable, which Florida in that, really, I think the only chance that you beat Florida is if Napier's still the coach. I know that's a weird or funny thing to say, but like that's probably your best shot to win is that he just comes in and absolutely gives the game away like he does so often. To me, that's your only shot in that one. But if they were to go 4-2 down the stretch and not get mauled by Notre Dame and Miami, right? Lose to Miami by 10, lose to Notre Dame by 14, something like that, I would feel like we're at least trending back upwards. Now, if they go 2-4 down the stretch, if they go 1-5 down the stretch or don't win it, then I'm going to, but at least it'll be kind of like 2021 where you went 5-7, but you at least went 5-3 down the stretch and you lost the 3 games you lost. You were an underdog in and you really had no business winning anyway. I think it would give me those kind of vibes. Like the season itself is still a failure, but at least they pulled together and I don't know, I don't really believe in momentum like at all, first of all, but second of all, like momentum from like November of 24 to August of 25. Like I don't believe in that kind of momentum, but it will show me that like, okay, Mike kind of got things trending back towards the right direction. I mean, if they were to make a bowl, I think that'd be huge for just buy in on him personally. If they were to somehow get to 6-6, and then go win a bowl game at 7-5, because everybody would be playing in it. I think it would feel better, right, than finishing at 3-9, like we kind of maybe project. So looking at the rest of the schedule, this is ESPN's FPI. It's not a perfect metric. I think they're a little low on Duke here. You're at a 41.6% to beat Duke, 10% to beat Miami, 56 to beat Carolina, 5.5 to beat Notre Dame, 99 to beat Charleston Southern still, and 33 to beat Florida, which I don't know. Yeah, 1-3. That's to me, that's the Napier effect, right? Or the true freshman Lagway. I don't expect Mertz to play again. You could theoretically win those 4. If you were to somehow win a 5th one and go 5-1 down the stretch, maybe you just lose at Notre Dame, maybe you just lose at Miami. I think you'd feel better than you would if you finished 3-9 for sure. But yeah, like the whole year itself is not saved. I do think, remember when we used to say like, well, as long as you beat your rivals, doesn't matter what else you do. If you somehow beat Miami and like ruined their year and then somehow beat Florida too, you'd feel a little bit better about that. At least you could get a couple trolls off, I guess, on social media. But yeah, there's really no saving the season. But I will say, like, if you could finish this year on an upswing, 3-3 is not enough for me. Like, you gotta find a way to have a winning record down the stretch. And a winning record down the stretch probably means you go 5-7. But if you can get a winning record down the stretch or somehow get to a bowl, the season still is a massive failure. And I'm not even projecting that they could do this, but if you could somehow get to a bowl, I do think you'd feel better just about the program's direction in general. Maybe 6-6 makes hiring a little bit easier for Mike. I think he's going to have a hard time. People, it would have been hard for him to hire or fire guys or hire new staff after going 13-0. Well, I'll tell you what, it's going to be a lot harder to hire guys after going 2-10 or 3-9. Like the personal decisions that Mike would have had to make at 13-0, that'd have sucked to fire some guys, and that'd have been hard, but not nearly as hard as it's going to be to try and get a new. That's the other thing people say, like, oh man, just hire a new staff, just get a better staff, and we'll be fine. How do you hire a better staff, Richie, when you're 4-8? Best case. How do you hire a better staff when you're 2-10? So yeah, it might have been hard last year. I don't think it would have been harder than what it's going to be this year. So yeah, 6-6 maybe gets you a little bit better of a staff. 7-6 would certainly do it if you could get to a bowl and win that. You could hire a little bit better. So there would be some positives that come with it. Not nearly the positives that you should have had when we were all booking hotel rooms for Charlotte. I saw CJ say something like, well, let me go ahead and cancel that hotel room after DC or Memphis or whatever. But yeah, I do think it'd be somewhat better. You'd be a little bit pointed more in the right direction. But again, even that seems like a leap. I think what's most likely though? What is your most likely record? I think it's 3-9. I think you beat Carolina and I think you split with the Carolina schools and you beat Charleston Southern. Like what's your projection?
Yeah, I could see 4-8. I really could, because Florida State, by college football standards as a whole, they're not that bad of a team. They're average, below average. By Power 5 standards, they're really bad, right? But I don't think they're playing anyone like Miami and Notre Dame. Sure, let's put those games aside. The other 4 games, I think you could win 3 of them. I really do. You still have a talented team. And if Brock Glenn continues to develop and take those next steps, I could see 4-8, which what a horrible thing to say as a Florida State fan. We might get to 4-8, TJ.
Oh, so yeah, certainly frustrating. Richie, give Rhoback some love, and then we will move on to a little recruiting, and then we'll talk a little bit about Duke, and then we'll get out of here.
Yeah, we're really excited this season to partner with Rhoback, RHOBACK.com. Use code DFNS20. That's DFNS20. 20% off your first purchase. They have the best, I promise you guys, the best performance joggers, polos, hoodies, female attire, anything you could imagine. I'm wearing the FSU Rhoback polo right now that's on the screen. Your team might suck on Saturdays, but your game day fit does not have to suck. It could be really nice if you go to rhoback.com and use our promo code. They have a ton of great stuff. Um, I've been a fan of them. I've been a customer well before they decided to partner with us, and I've been so excited that they hopped on board and partnered with us. TJ and I, when it comes to sponsorships, we're very critical on who we decide to agree with. And, when they came to us, it was a no brainer that we were definitely going to do it. I have multiple polos, hoodies, joggers. Love them all. My wife tells me I wear them too much. That's fine. But go to rhoback.com, RHOBACK.com. Use promo code DFNS20 for 20% off your first time purchase. And hop on board, guys. I truly do love this stuff. Again, we would not advertise with the company we did not believe in.
Appreciate it, Rhoback. Yeah, their stuff is great. And man, anytime I've kind of been around anywhere on this, like when I was up there for the Clemson game, like everybody had that on, which was really, really cool. So, all right, Richie, Florida State recruiting lost one and then gained one this weekend. I didn't have, well, it was before the weekend, so I'll say that. But I didn't have power, so couldn't do really a breakdown on either one, the loss or the gain. Florida State loses a 4-star wide receiver in Dalen McCutcheon. He flips over to Texas. The second commit that Florida State has had flip from Florida State to Texas, and might not be the last one. At a position of need, they really desperately need to hold on to guys at, because it's just one of their worst position groups on the field right now. The wide receivers are not good. No offense to them. Now we got some young guys that are maybe somewhat promising, but you need to continue to stack talent there. Florida State had 3 wide receivers committed at one time, Richie, in Dalen McCutcheon, CJ Wiley, who is still committed, and I'm blanking on the third one. Who was the third one committed? Harlan, help me out. But anyway, they had 3 wide receivers committed, all of them now gone, and have decommitted or flipped elsewhere. And it seems like, well, CJ Wiley's still here for now, saying all the right things. A pretty big indictment on Ron Dugans. We had said for a while. Yeah, we'd said for a while that Dugans had not been recruiting incredibly well. And now with, 2 decommitments gone and another one looking like it could happen at any point with CJ Wiley, hopefully they're able to continue to lock him in. Malik Clark, yeah, thank you for the assist there. Looks like he's gone. Did he flip back to South Carolina, or is he just decommitted? It looks like South Carolina is like the leader there if he didn't officially make it back to their class. But anyway, all of the early momentum you had in recruiting, especially at the wide receiver position, looks like it's about gone. They're having to circle back on kids committed elsewhere like UCF and stuff. So yeah, they're, kind of backup plan to backup plans at this point. The indictment on Ron Dugans, and, what's frustrating, again, not to fire everybody here. Richie said he didn't want to fire people because he felt bad, or, I don't feel bad at all. If you don't do your job well, you don't get to keep your job. But, Mike tried to move on from Dugans in 2021, right? And then couldn't do it. Like, could not hire from a position of strength, and so could not upgrade from Dugans, which is fine. He tried to go get the, the guy from Penn State, right, Sider. And that just didn't work out. Couldn't get him because Mike was on the hot seat going into 2022. And then still, for whatever reason, Mike didn't feel the need to go upgrade there. And look what it's about to cost you. I know that everybody thought like, oh, well, Dugans, got you Hakeem Williams, and the ROI on that's been pretty terrible. And I like Hakeem. I hope he turns out to be really, really good and a first-round draft pick. I just don't know if that's going to happen. But yeah, like Dugans didn't all of a sudden turn into a great recruiter. I think you won a big NIL battle to get Hakeem, and that's pretty much where you are right now. You didn't upgrade there, and it's probably going to cost you a wide receiver in this round. And the wide receivers at Florida State just are not good enough right now, and It doesn't look like the class is going to get much better.
Yeah, it's frustrating. I think taking a gamble on Johnny Wilson and him working out really gave Dugans another year. And then, striking gold with Keon Coleman, even though he wasn't really healthy after that LSU game, getting him, that gave Dugans another year. But where's the point? We've talked about this. There's multiple coaches that need to move on, or Mike needs to move on from. Ron Dugans might be at the top of the list, him and Randy Shannon. I'm naming names. I don't care at this point. You know, FSU can listen and get upset with us. Just blame it on me, TJ. But yeah, it's unacceptable. When you're at Florida State, the state of Florida doesn't always have the best guys in the trenches. They always have elite skill players. Look at what Jeremiah Smith is doing at Ohio State right now. You were in it for him. You just could not close with him. And instead, you're running out what we're running out every Saturday and what will be this Friday night. And it's just embarrassing. DJ, he deserves plenty of blame, but he's got no help from, his receivers or tight ends or anyone. And now we're losing our best recruits, which aren't even, it's not even like we're losing top elite 5-star talent guys. We're losing good players. Don't get me wrong. I'm like, if you go to Texas right now, you're pretty dang good, but we're not losing super elite players right now. And we don't really have any backups. And that's been the problem with the staff and recruiting since they've been here. And that goes on Mike is, when something goes south, your backup plan isn't someone else that's really good. Your backup plan is, let me try and poach someone from UCF or, Northwestern or whatever it may be. And that's an issue in my opinion. And it's not been corrected in 5 years. And that's another frustrating part. And when you talk about, how long is Mike going to be here? Well, if this continues, not long.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, if you don't bring talent in, whether that's through the portal or high school, this is kind of what you get. So the good side of that, the positive side of recruiting is that Florida State did get a kind of a flip, like kid decommitted from Mississippi State and ended up picking Florida State. Mario Nash, again, didn't do a video on this, just mostly because we didn't have power for a few days in Tampa. But 2025 Class O lineman, tackle maybe, probably going to end up being a guard because we take 4 billion guards at Florida State and then never develop any of them. But 6'4", 270 pounds, out of DeKalb, Mississippi. 4-star everywhere, a little lower ranked on 3, which I actually like on 3's rankings a little bit better for most guys. And so it kind of worries me that they're lower on him than everyone else is, but I'm not going to poo-poo the commit. I'm glad that Mario Nash picked the Seminoles. He's the number 36th ranked tackle on 3's website. He's top 10 on both ESPN and Rivals, which I think are mostly trash. And then he's number 14 on 247, which is probably a little bit better. To come out with an on-3 industry grade of the number 22 offensive tackle overall. So a good pickup for the Noles, a kid that's going to have to be developed. I mean, he's certainly not going to come in here and play game 1 of against Alabama. I certainly hope he doesn't by any means. Florida State, Richie, right now on offensive line, listen to the talent that they have kind of in that room if they can keep some of these guys committed. Lucas Simmons, who didn't play at all last year, hasn't gotten in at all this year, was injured last year, so we'll give him a little bit of a pass. Lucas Simmons, Andre Otto, who has gotten in and played a little bit. ITT was a commit that you picked up. Jonathan Daniels was a very highly rated commit that you got last year. Solomon Thomas is one of the best tackles in the country that you have committed right now. We'll see if they can hold on to him. Nash just committed, and Peyton Joseph, who is another 4-star. That is all blue chip recruits, minus Andre Otto, who has played for you more than anyone else on that list so far. Now, obviously, he's a little bit older and didn't spend last year injured like Lucas Simmons did. There's a lot of potential and a lot of talent in that room. And we're just calling a spade at this point. I don't really have a lot of qualms with FSU's O-line recruiting. I think that's actually been pretty good. It's been a bright spot in recruiting for the Noles. What I probably have a big problem with is the development. Where are guys like Armella? Where are guys like Simmons? Where are guys that have been in this program for multiple years? Why aren't they seeing the field? Why aren't they playing? Offensive line is a little bit of a crapshoot. You throw numbers at that problem and you see how many guys you can get in and you see how many guys end up working out for you. So far, Florida State has not done a very good job of developing offensive linemen. I don't believe that they have had an offensive lineman drafted since this staff has been in place. That is 4 drafts that have happened. It would surprise me if they had anyone drafted in this 2025 draft that's coming in April. That's pretty bad, right? The offensive line did go from very bad to like mediocre back to like below average, I think, this year. In the 2021, 22 years, they got a little bit better. 23 was a little bit better. 24 has been pretty terrible. And, there's been injuries. I get it. Yeah, bad, but everybody deals with injuries. Ohio State had their top tackle go down the other night, and they still kept running the ball because they had recruited and developed well there. So Florida State adds Nash to the class. They've got a lot of talent in that room. Can that talent be developed? Can Atkins kind of turn things around there? I don't know. I don't know what his prospects are right now with the show cause and everything else that he's got going on for Mike letting him go. I don't know that Mike's going to make changes at both coordinator positions, though I think he probably should. But there is a lot of talent there, and they continue to stack talent in that room. They just haven't been able to seem to do anything with the talent.
Yeah, it's frustrating because, that was the biggest thing with Rick Trickett when he was here under Jimbo Fisher is, you signed nothing but 3 stars on the offensive line, really, because no elite players wanted to go play for Rick Trickett. And that was one of the biggest frustrations, again, with Jimbo Fisher is that, he knew this was happening and he just continued to employ Rick Trickett, who is a very good coach from everything I heard and people I spoke with, but nobody wanted to play for him. Rodney Hudson was, one of one. He came in, he was committed to Rick Trickett at West Virginia. When, Rick Trickett took the job at Florida State, he immediately flipped to Florida State. Cam Irving, one of Florida State's best offensive linemen of the past decade, wasn't even recruited as an offensive lineman. He was a defensive lineman. And Jimbo, his best skill ever as a coach, in my opinion, was understanding where a player needs to play. He's like, no, you're an offensive lineman. You're not a defensive lineman. And that worked out really well. Well, now we have Alex Atkins, and it's another difficult conversation where you're not a play calling offensive coordinator. Your main focus is the offensive line. We have quite literally the worst rushing attack in the country. The stats.
Hey, Kent State.
No, Kent State passed us. Kent State passed us yesterday.
We got passed on our day off.
They ran for 67 yards and passed us. Like it's that bad. I don't know. Alex Atkins, I think he needs to go too. Like, I hate just calling out coaches at midseason because, it's just an unfortunate situation. But, like, what are you doing? To your point, TJ, developmental wise, like, we have a worse rushing attack than Kent State. That's where we are. And it's not because we don't have good running backs. I mean, we have okay running backs. I think Tuafili is a really good guy. I do think Keziah Holmes is a good running back, but the offensive line just whatever it's not working, or it's not working with Mike, and that's up to Mike to make those decisions and say, listen, I think you're a good coach. I'm going to give you a good reference, but it's not working out here, so we need to move on. There's a good way to do that. As someone who's had to let people go before, it sucks. But you always shake their hands and say, hey, if you need me, let me know. Now, yeah, the really, really crappy ones, you just get rid of. I don't think Atkins is that guy. I think Atkins has a really bright future in college football. But, man, it's just so frustrating. And the recruiting, to recruit so well at that position. TJ, you and I, we started a fund to buy Atkins a box of cigars. Like, we've been supporters of him. I just don't see it anymore, and I'm ready to move on from there as well, and anywhere else we need to.
Yeah, it's tough. I like Alex personally a lot, but just the development there hasn't been very good. And you could say unlucky, but everybody's unlucky. Like you have things that go your way and don't go your way. So what I think is tough is, again, with the show, I think Mike's too loyal. And I think with the show cause, I don't know if he will make any changes. And I think that double bad hurts you. Like that hurts you on 2 fronts. One, because I think you need somebody that can develop offensive line a little bit better than has been done. I also think Mike needs an offensive coordinator that can call plays and take that off of his plate. And so, you can't demote Alex to just offensive line because you'd be paying him way too much to do so. So I don't think you can afford to bring in an OC to be paying another OC the right amount of money, and then you pay an Atkins an OC salary to just be a line coach, which hasn't been very good at that. And then at the same time, I don't think Mike's going to fire him with a show cause. Now, I think another place could hire him even with the show cause. That's kind of on the NCAA to determine. I think you can get around it in some places, but I think because of that, Mike's going to be loyal and not let him go. That's my take. Maybe I'm wrong on that later. Maybe Atkins turns it around. Maybe we start playing well after the bye week. Maybe next year the offensive line is the best in the ACC. Not going to bet on that, but my take is on it that I just don't know that that anything's going to change. You can't hire another OC and have Atkins making more than that guy.
No.
Just doing O-line. So I don't know. I struggle to think that things will improve there. I'd love to be wrong on that. So, hey, if you're watching this, I know that it's coming out of a bye week. I know that we're all frustrated. I know that we're all in a bad mood. We're missing some trolls this week. I don't know. Maybe Miami fans forgot that there existed college football because they didn't play yesterday. But, do me a favor and hit the subscribe button if you have not already. We really do appreciate it. It cost you a thing, but it does help us out a ton if you would do us a favor of hitting that subscribe button. So, Richie, we talked about this a little bit, and Florida State opened up as a 1-point dog. You said it's up to 3 now, a 3-point underdog against Duke. We'll preview this more fully. I'm actually thankful this is on Friday night so that I can just, either move on to Saturday was so relaxing. It was so great. I'm excited about this being on a Friday night. That way we can just get either the thrill of victory or the agony of defeat done with faster. But yeah, I see that, on ESPN right now, it is showing as a 3-point spread. The line is not available some places. But Duke, a 3-point favorite. Florida State 22-0 against Duke all time. It says 20-0 on Winsipedia, but I think that it's 22 times that we've played them. Early thoughts there before we even get into the game, just early thoughts about, I understand the idea of a sod game, but okay.
I know where you're going.
I think Mike Norvell, maybe people don't even care. Maybe they're so checked out that they don't even care. I think Mike Norvell should say, I understand the tradition. I understand the reason that we do things. Friday night, no matter what, say the line goes back our way, right? Say the line goes back our way and we end up being a 1-point favorite. Either way, no matter what happens, Mike Norvell should come out and say, Friday night is not a sod game. We are not an underdog to Duke at Florida State, and we are not bringing back sod from North Carolina if we beat Duke. Maybe people don't care about this, Richie. Maybe they don't give a crap because they're so checked out on the year. I think Mike Norvell with the diehards could win back a little bit of favor if he kind of applies this standard that he talks about and says, Duke is not a sod game. I don't care if we're a 14-point dog by the time kickoff happens. We are not bringing back sod if we beat Duke. I would respect that a ton. Maybe I'm crazy, but I think a lot of other people would agree with that. We are not bringing back grass from Duke if we win that game. And I will be disgusted if we do.
Man, I'm a traditionalist. And the fact is, if you are an underdog on the road or any bowl game, as Florida State traditions suggest, you bring back sod. I think you bring the sod back. So, we agree a lot on this show. So I'm glad this is something we can disagree on. But, if the line swings back by Friday morning to where Florida State's favored by 1, okay, it's not a sod game anymore. I do think it's hilarious that when you think of the concept of how old this is, that Florida State shows Vegas betting lines in a college football sport to decide if we bring sod back or not. But no, I think you do bring it back, and I think you use it as a message. I think you flip it upside down, TJ. I think you say you should be pissed off. We had to bury sod from Durham, North Carolina, because you guys beat Duke. That should never be the case again. It should never happen again. I better not, in the entire time that I am the head coach at Florida State, ever have a sod game at a place like Duke or Wake Forest or Boston College or Syracuse ever again. That's unacceptable. And I think you use it to kind of spin it a little bit. But I'm a believer in the tradition. And unfortunately, if we are an underdog at kickoff, as we are right now, I do think it should be a sod game. It sucks that it is. It's a wake-up call in the reality of where we are at as a program right now. But I think you do it.
Yeah, I'm gonna pretty strongly disagree. I'm okay with that take. I get the tradition. I get just kind of living. You gotta. But I'm very against this. I'm very against calling this a sod game.
Hey, bring me that sod from Wallace Wade Stadium, baby. Let's go.
No, I think that's disgusting. I think that you've got sod in there from the 80s from the
Orange
shoe.
Bowl. Yeah.
Yeah, the Orange Bowl, the shoe, the swamp,
Big house.
the big house, Nebraska, LSU. You've putting Assad from Duke in there next to those is ridiculous to me. Like, I'm telling you now. Okay, so you like the tradition. I'm good with that. Like, I understand the take. But like, would you not just have a little bit more respect for Mike Norvell if he said, like, this isn't our standard, we're not doing this? Like, hey, we're not doing the sod thing with Duke.
Yeah, I'd have no problem whatsoever if he said that, and I would support him in that. But for me personally, again, traditionalist, it is what it is. College football, I think, is the greatest sport in the world, and the traditions are what make it the greatest sport in the world. But if Mike Norvell came out and said, here's the thing, though. If Mike Norvell comes out and says, hey, this is not a sod game, I don't care what Vegas says, and then you lose the game, that's just a terrible look. Right?
Losing to Duke is a terrible look one way or the other. I don't know that it's.
I wouldn't know because we've never lost to them.
Yeah.
So
we're not Miami.
Yeah, exactly. And hopefully we don't need 8 laterals to beat them. But
if that's what it takes, though, we'll print T-shirts.
But like I would totally respect Mike if he said, listen, no, Florida State, we're having a down year, but we have a standard here. This is not a sod game, but then you're given so much motivation. Talk about bulletin board material for an opposing team. That would be it. And they're a team that's probably close to where you are in terms of ability to win the game. But I'll say this, if Mike comes out and said, no, not a sod game, not against Duke, it's not going to happen, and Florida State wins, that will look so good on him in this terrible, terrible season. But if he says that and then they lose, man, those post-game press conferences from the Duke coaches and players, that they could be brutal.
Yeah, I don't know that it's something that Mike needs. Now, I do hope that somebody in the press conference, like I hope Nee or Ira or somebody asks about this tomorrow in the Monday afternoon press conference, because this needs to be addressed. It needs to be addressed how far we are down.
I might call it on the Zoom, TJ.
It needs to be addressed. So, but I don't have a big problem if Mike just doesn't mention it, and then after the game they mention it and say, like, yeah, we, just as an FYI, like, that's what I would prefer. Hey, post-game press conference, not to rub this in Duke's face, not to be a jerk or anything like that. Hey, we typically do side games where we're an underdog. We did not think it was up to the Florida State standard, and that's why you didn't see us cutting any of the sod up when we just won this game in Duke. Like, we didn't want to make a big deal of it before the game. We didn't want to, talk bad about their program or anything like that before the game. After the game, we did not tear up any of the sod and bring it home because we didn't think that was up to the standard of Florida State. To me, that would be the best way to do it. You don't necessarily need to make a big announcement about it before the game or give Duke any kind of, bulletin board material or anything like that. But, that would be the way that I would say you
don't
probably
want to see Blake Nicholson just on his knee cutting up some sod from Wallace Wade Stadium?
Dude, remember when we were down, what game was it that we were losing? It was the game after Virginia Tech. So FSU 2018 football schedule. The game after Virginia Tech that year, we were playing somebody terrible. Samford. And we were losing to Samford. And down multiple scores to Samford, we got an interception, and we put on that turnover backpack, which was corny and stupid anyway. But imagine 2 scores down to Samford, and you put on a turnover backpack. That was the Willie Taggart era in a nutshell. That, to me, is the same thing as having to dig up sod at Duke and put that back in the sod cemetery. It's disrespectful to every road win we've ever had.
I'm pretty sure Wallace Wade is turf, and we'll get a pretty hefty bill sent to us if we do cut it up there.
Good. I hope that's the reason we can't do it. So, speaking of that, I do have some of the turf from still from the Rose Bowl. I asked the security guard down at the bottom. I was like, "Hey, can you just pull up some grass?" He looked at me like I was freaking crazy. But then I was like, "I'll give you $10." He's like, "Dude, you can just have it. Don't worry about it." I'm gonna go look at that grass and just stare at that if we actually cut grass out of Duke field. Okay, early thought on that. You don't have to make an official prediction, but do you think we win? We'll preview it later. But do you think we win?
I'll just say I feel pretty good about it.
Richie's the eternal optimist. I actually feel good too, but I like how quick you just were with that. All right, we will preview it later, so make sure you're subscribed and tune in because I'm sure the Duke preview is something that you guys are all looking forward to later this week. Hey, if you are watching,
Florida State versus Duke, this is can't miss TV, guys.
yeah, it's basically like basketball in 2012. It's just you can't look away. 5-1 Duke, 1-5 Florida State. Never thought I'd see the day. Florida State against Duke on Friday night. Can't wait for that one. Hopefully kind of get back on the right track. Hey, we will do a call-in show live on Tuesday morning. So if you're watching this and you've got some takes that you want to get off about Norvell, Dugans, Shannon, Fuller, Atkins, I don't care, Duke, Sod, whatever, make sure you're with us at 9 a.m. on Tuesday morning. We'll do a call-in show right here on this YouTube channel, Double Fries No Slaw. So make sure that you are subscribed for that. Richie, any shout-outs before we get out of here?
No, just to your point at the top of the show, shout out everybody who was affected in the path of Milton. My mom is still without power in Vero Beach, so definitely praying for her, and hopefully she gets back soon. And anyone impacted, hurricanes suck, but that's part of living in the Southeast. I spent 34 straight hours at the hospital for work. That was miserable, but happy to do it in the grand scheme of things. We were lucky here, but reach out to any or look out to any hurricane relief funds if you have the means, because it's extremely important in this. From what I've seen, this could be the most expensive hurricane in the history of Florida.
Yeah, pretty brutal stuff. Very appreciative that people I know, the worst that they kind of had was some power down, some trees down. Nobody that I know was hurt or impacted like that. So, prayers up to those that did have to go through it. It was certainly scary to do it with 3 little kids in my house because you just never know. But fortunately, we skated by and we didn't have it too bad. But I know a lot of people had a lot worse than we did. So prayers up to those impacted. And certainly still people dealing with Helene as well. Some people impacted by both, which really sucks. So prayers up to all those that were impacted multiple times and even just once. So thinking about you. Appreciate you guys as always for tuning in. Big shout out from me for the people that tuned in. We had good numbers tonight, even coming out of a bye, even with a 1-5 team. Maybe you guys are just masochists, or maybe Richie, maybe we do an okay job to where people tune in and want to point and laugh at us. But whichever the case is, we appreciate you guys a ton for hanging out. Again, we'll be back with a call-in show on Tuesday morning. If you missed any of our show, you can also check out some clips that we'll put out on it on YouTube this week. We appreciate you guys a ton. We'll talk to you soon. Go Noles.
Go Noles.